Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Walden Wong Art. Today I'm going to be doing an art review and critique over one of my Patreon's work. This artwork is for Patreon Anthony. So Anthony, this one's for you. We're going to look at your work and then we're going to critique it and then talk about how we can make the art a little bit better. So for those of you who landed on my video and you don't know who I am, my name is Walden Wong. I'm a comic book artist from Marvel DC as well as numerous other publishers. You can check out my website, is waldenwongart.com. Over there you can see some of my gallery, my work. Also order some of the comic books that I worked on. So if you're interested in that, check out my website. And for those of you who are interested in being one of my being part of one of my mentorships where you can show me some of your artwork, check out my Patreon. It's patreon.com/WaldenWongArt. There's different tiers. There's a mystery tier for mystery boxes of artwork. There's also a tier for show me your artwork and I will critique it. And there's also other tiers where if you're just want to show support for me making these videos for you, thinking about supporting me over there on Patreon. Thank you so much. So without further ado, let's check out Andrew's inking work over on this Deadpool Spider-Man artwork. Here we go. Alright, so this is one of the pages. This is one of the inking assignments that I have over on Patreon. So you've probably seen this image before. But this is Andrew's work. So we're going to take a look at his work. And we're going to take a look at the pencils first. So we're going to look at the layers. Okay, we're going to turn this. So here's the whole image. Control 0, whole image. So here's the pencils. These are the pencils that patrons can download on my site, and then they can print it out and start inking it. And then once it's inked, it'll look something like this. Okay, so let's take a look at the artwork so far. Let me move this out of the way. Okay, so there's some areas that you forgot to ink. So like this area here, you forgot to ink this. I think that's the logo of that character's outfit. You forgot to ink some of these texture here. So some of these X's that Ed McGuinness, the penciler, some artists instead of filling in everything in black, they'll just put an X there. I know Ed McGuinness sometimes when he does X's instead of I see these X's here. So that means black. Okay, so we're gonna go make sure you fill this in all in black and then just ink in some of the texture over here. You also missed a few lines over here. Let's take a look at McGuinness pencils. Okay, so here you forgot to ink these little triangle lines. To achieve this, I would use a brush and ink it in, or a quill. Or if you're using a micron, just kind of draw that little triangle and then just fill it in. But if you had a brush, you can fill that in like quickly with one stroke. Okay, let's see some of these other areas. Again, don't forget to ink this piece over here. Let's take a look. So you did use like a whiteout on top of the lines, so that's pretty good. I would just go in there and ink the whiteout a little bit darker. Let me create another layer over here first. So we have a white background. Move this down here. Let me go here. Let me go to my layers and then travel this to the bottom, and then drop in the white first, so we don't see that. Drop in the white here. There we go. Okay, is it white? Okay, there. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at some of the other areas. Okay, so when inking, I would work on line weights. Let's see, line weights as in lines are thin and it gets thicker on some areas, and then thin and it gets thicker on another area. Okay, when you're inking hatch lines, try to make them spaced evenly. Let me use red so we can see everything. So this area here, some of these lines I can tell that it's thicker over here and these are thin, and then right over here we have like a thick line and then some thin lines and a thick line. When you're inking, try to have those lines consistent if you can. So just go in there and make them a little bit more consistent. And then when you're cross hatching, space them evenly. So when you have those those crisscross pattern, the little squares looks kind of the same. It's kind of pixelated. I'm gonna make this resolution a little bit higher. Image size, make this resolution maybe 200. So when I make markups, it's a little bit clearer. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these other. Okay, so here, some of these lines, it's better to create like a sharp point. So I'm gonna go over here and kind of sharp. You want that sharp tip instead of a blunt here. Sometimes pencils are just drawing lines, but you want your lines to be sharp. To achieve this, I'm using a ruler, I'm using a quill, and I'm pressing down on the quill. You can rotate it. Say you're rotating it, and when you're drawing that line with the ruler, I'll just lightly draw that line in the air and slowly land it like you're landing an airplane. This way, the tip of your lines are sharp. Try not to have these blunts. You can also ink it the other way, where imagine you're flying an airplane, you're slowly taking off, so you can get that sharper tip. Okay. See, let's rotate it back. Rotate it back here. And let's see, so far so good. So here, sometimes it's hard to ink a longer line. Like for example, the sword over here. What I would do is I would maybe use a post. I actually have something called the French curve and the flex curve. French curve is this ruler that it's kind of arched a certain way that you can draw that line in an arc, and then the flex curve is this ruler that you can bend into shape. Now, if you don't have that, what I can recommend is maybe you can get a post-it note. For example, stick the post-it note here, and then stick the post-it note like right over here. That way, you're masking off the area, and then you rotate your artwork so you can find the right angle to draw that line. Okay, so if the angle of my arm doesn't draw that line nicely, I can turn the paper a little bit. So once you draw that line, you can draw it on top of the post-it note, and then once it's inked, you can remove the post-it note, and then you can like finish off the rest of the tip. So which is, for example, like here, I'm just going to draw the line. Now, the quicker you draw the line, the smoother that line is. So right here, I'm going to go like this. Okay, I'm going to rotate it a little bit more so it works for my hand, and then I'm going to draw that line there. Okay, and then we'll draw the other line. So I do something called the ghost line. A ghost line is where I'm mimicking that movement to see if I can draw the line. Once I can draw the line, then I'll put pencil and paper and I'll draw the line quickly. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other areas. Yeah, so I would focus on line weights, Anthony. So right here, I would have this line a little bit thin and then thick over here, and then thin here and then thick over here. Same with some of the arms over here. So I would have this thin and then thick here and then thin here. Okay, same with the hair. We want to make hair look like it's nice and flowing. So we have thick and then thin here, like this, and then thick and then thin here. Okay, if you're on my Patreon, if you're part of my Patreon, you can also watch me ink the same page. There's links in my Patreon that you can follow me ink the same page, and you can pause and play. It's almost as close as me being there teaching you in person. Okay, so when you're inking line weights, what you want to do is you want to create thick to thin lines. Okay, that way your like objects that you're creating has depth to the work. See how I'm creating this by hand, and all this is just like applying the amount of pressure to your brush. Okay, if I'm creating this arm, for example, this part of the arm right here, I would go thin, thick, thick like that. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other areas. Okay, so these little markings here, this just means that it's supposed to be black. Okay, so make sure you fill those in black, and then because that's black, these are also black strips over here. All these over here, these little X's here, that means it's black. That's just the penciler's way of telling the inker that he wants this to be black, so he doesn't have to fill it in. So all this is supposed to be black. So all this is supposed to be black. So don't forget to fill those in a little bit later. Okay. These lines, same thing like what I mentioned earlier. Rotate your hand. Again, feel free to put a post-it note to cover up this area. So when you draw a line, you can just draw the line here and then remove this part of the post-it note. But then kind of move your angle the same, like to angle your hand a little bit better, and then just do a ghost line. Ghost line is when you're making that movement and then go in there and then just draw lines. Those lines doesn't have to follow exactly how the speed lines are. If it's close to it, then it's okay. So for example, here's another post-it note. I would just cover up this area. I would put another post-it note over here, and then I would angle it, make sure I can get that line right, and if not, I would turn it a little bit, and then I would just draw those lines, like 4 of those lines, do a ghost line, and then draw it in completely, and then remove the post-it notes, and then your lines will be inside the panel. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other areas. Okay, so Anthony, I would practice on drawing line weights. So make certain lines thin and thick. So when I say thick, it's just pressing down harder, and then thin lines just controlling, easing up lighter. Looks like you're using a brush, so that's a good thing. Another tip I can give you is when you're inking with a brush, the faster, okay, so watch. I'm holding my pen right now. If I'm using a brush, if I go slow, you see how wobbly it is? That's just natural. Like when you're drawing lines slowly, you're gonna get a wobbly line. But watch what happens when I draw that line quickly. There's no chance for your fingers to make that wobbly line. So when you're inking lines or when you're drawing lines, what I'm doing is I'm focusing on where the line begins. Like I'll start here and I'll focus on where the line ends. And then I'll make that movement to see if I can go from here to here very quickly. If not, I'll rotate it and I'll do another ghost line. I'll make that movement. Once I think I can make that movement, then I'll go quickly. You'll be surprised how your hand will automatically stop there. It's like controlling your hand. Say there's an orange on the table. You're moving your hand quickly, you're grabbing the orange. It's just like drawing. When you look at where your destination ends, your hand will automatically just stop there. So if I had like this line, I want to stop right here, my hand will automatically stop there. Okay. If you need a little bit of help, you just put a post-it note over there to cover up those lines and then remove it later. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other areas. So when you're inking, make sure not to have extra lines coming out like that. Okay, let's take a look over here. Okay, so white lines, Anthony, I would go in here and just use the whiteout twice. Let it dry for a little bit and then use it twice. If you're using a gel pen like what I use, sometimes it takes a little bit for it to, like sometimes you're whitening out a certain area and then it just turns gray. Let it dry completely for a minute, work on another area and then come back to it and then use the gel pen on top of it later. We need to talk about these hatch lines again. So these lines. So again, I'm going to erase this area, and then I'm going to show you how I approach drawing those lines. Okay. So I'm going to use black. Usually I'll use red so everyone can see, and then I would rotate it to where I can start with a lighter line first. So here I'll start with a lighter line, like this, and then as I'm going into the black, notice that my lines are getting thicker. Not only is it getting thicker, but it's also getting wider and closer to each other. Okay, this creates a gradation. Okay, and then when I crosshatch, I'm rotating again to where my hand can draw the line better, and I'll start lightly. Okay, and then as I'm drawing those lines, I'm starting to press down harder, and not only am I pressing down harder, I'm also going closer to each other. Like those lines are closer to right next to each other. And then now when you look at it, it has more of a tone to it. Okay, so let's take a look at it before I did that, just so you can compare the line work. Whoops, this went a little bit too far. So yeah, this is before, like that. And then when you do that technique that I just talked about, it creates more of a cleaner tone. Okay. So let's take a look at some of the other areas that you can improve upon. Yeah, I would erase this, use whiteout. So one of the things that I've learned in working in comics is when you're inking and you make mistakes, it's always okay to use whiteout, because once the artwork goes to print, nobody knows that you use whiteout. Okay, no one knows that you erase something. No one knows that you use correction fluid or a white gel pen to erase something, and that's always okay. So just keep that in mind. But the only thing that you have to remember is if you use too much whiteout and you have to ink back on top of it, you're going to create this little glob on top of the paper. And then when you're using a brush and inking on top of it, you're not going to get that smooth line. Sometimes that glob becomes like a thing that makes your brush skip, and then just going to be some white lines. Okay, so yeah, work on line weights. So some of the, I'm going to show you how I would ink certain lines over here. I'm going to use red again. So like say this part of the arm here, this part, I would make this thin and then go thick, like here. Let me get a thicker brush. So do that again, here, thick, and then start thicker and then thin. It's okay to break up the lines, go thick, like that. And then some people will ask, how do you know which part needs to be thicker and which part needs to be thinner? So I'm thinking the light source is coming from here, and because the light source is here, I'm going to ink this part of the hand. So I'm going to go thinner, and then this part go thicker, thinner here, and thicker on this side. Okay? Let's take a look at, also Spider-Man, I would have this part, the bottom part of the face, a little bit thicker. Okay, it's also this part of her hand a little bit thicker. This chest over here, because Spider-Man's chest is in the foreground, I would have this line a little bit thicker, just to pop him forward in front of this character over here. Okay, let's take a look here. Nice thick lines over here. I like this thick lines. I will work on speed, Anthony. Again, the faster you ink lines, the smoother it is. So I'm going to rotate this, okay, and then demonstrate. Okay, I'm going to ink maybe these lines in here. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to do very quick lines and then just pattern it, like right in there. Okay, so the faster you ink those lines, the cleaner and smoother those lines are. So work on speed a little bit. One of the things that I've practiced on when I first started learning how to ink was I would just get a scratch piece of paper and then I would just practice drawing lines really quickly. I would practice drawing diagonal lines where I'm going thick and thin to thick, like this, like that. And I would draw bloop lines where it's thick and then thin and then thick, just to control working on the pressure. Okay, and then I would draw like a line here and a line here. I would practice drawing those lines to see if I can reach that destination without going over. Okay, like if I had a line here, I would just practice trying to draw those lines. That way I don't accidentally say something here to here. I don't accidentally ink lines going out that direction. Okay, yeah, so work on speed. I don't know if you're using your left hand to rotate your canvas often. When I'm inking, my left hand is constantly rotating the Bristol board to make sure I have the right angle to work on. Like say if I'm working on the Spider-Man's head, and because I'm right-handed, I would rotate it to where my right hand can make that arch line a little bit better. Like say if I want to ink this line, I would rotate it again, and then my hand can ink that arch line a little bit better. I would rotate it this way to ink this line and so forth. Okay, like say this arm over here, this leg over here, I would rotate it this way to ink that line like this, and then I would rotate it this way to ink this line like this. So it's always okay to rotate. Like I'm always constantly rotating. So this is Anthony's work for Spider-Man and Deadpool and this character. I forget the name of this character, even though I worked on this issue. If you know, comment down below, let me know. And that's Anthony's work. If you have any questions, please comment down below. I'll respond to your questions. And that's it for this art review. Good job, Anthony. Keep up the good work. Let me see if there's any other areas. Yeah, so work on hatch lines a little bit. So you want patterns. Look how, so sometimes a penciler can draw them that way, but you as an inker, you want to make sure they're done nicely. You see how these rectangles are, they're nice, perfectly rectangles, but then this one is like smaller and this one is bigger. You want your rectangles to be kind of like even, unless you're going into a gradation, like this. Okay, see, even I still need to rotate to get the right angle for me to draw those lines. So I'm rotating, I'm gonna zoom in, and then now I'm going to draw that same pattern. So that way my little boxes are similar to each other. So there you go. That's today's art review and critique video. We'll for one of my patrons. His name is Anthony. Good job, Anthony. Keep up the good work. If you're interested in being one of my patrons and also show me some of your artwork that I can critique, check out my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/WongWongArt. Over there, there's different tiers, such as this mentorship tier, as well as tiers to show support if you enjoy these videos. Also, below my video description, there's also Amazon links that you can order art supplies from. Anything you order, I get a little bit of kickback from Amazon, so that also helps. So until next time, keep on drawing, keep on inking, keep on creating. The more you practice, the better you get. Take care and talk to you next time. Bye-bye.